10.0.0.0/8, and let this be 20.0.0.0/8, and let this network be 30.0.0.0/. So if you want, you can name all these networks. Let's say the naming of this network, I want to keep this as, let's say, New York. This is my New York local area network, or New York network. Let's say this is my California. Let's say this is my Illinois. This is my Florida. So I will be keeping, for this, it will be 10.10 PC address will be 10.10, and this PC address will be 20.10. Thus this PC address be 30.10, and let this PC address be 40.10. Now, the interfaces, this side of the interface, which will be serial 0/0, it will be 0.1, and this side it will be 0.2. So similarly, I will be putting all these addresses with a .1. That means 20.0.0.1. And this will be 0.2. Similarly here, this will be 30.0.0.1, and this will be 30.0.0.2. Our fast Ethernet interface, I'm going to keep all these FA 0/0. We always let's say this is 10.1, and this, for this network, it will be 20.1. Remember, this is FA 0/0. And then for this network, it will be FA 0/0 30.1. For this network, it will be FA 0/0 40.1. Now let's start configuring our PCs. PC 0. Go to desktop, IP configuration. It's 192.168.10.10 with the default subnet mask, which is a class C subnet mask. It's /24. And our gateway will be our fast Ethernet interface 0/0, which is 192.168.10.1 for our PC 0. Close this off. Then go to PC 1, which will be our California network. Its host address will be 192.168.20.10. Subnet mask. Default gateway will be 192.168.20.1. That's what our FA 0/0 is, which is also known as default gateway. Now go to our Illinois network and repeat the same thing what we did in our New York and California network host addresses. 192.168.30.10. Give the subnet mask. 192.168.30.1 will be our default gateway. And let's configure the last host of our network, Florida, which is 192.168.40.10. Give us a subnet mask. 192.168.40.1 will be our default gateway. So once you completed configuring all these hosts, now let's go to our first router, which will be our New York router. So start from New York router. And if you notice on New York router, we have to configure three things. Number one, we will configure the host name as a New York. Second thing to configure is our fast Ethernet 0/0. And the next is the serial interface, which will be our S0/0. And remember, this is DCE, because this is a DCE side, we need to configure a clock rate. Right? So every time, whenever the DCE side comes in, make sure you configure it with clock rate. So let's begin with our New York router. So go to CLI, say no, enter, enable, conf T. Now change the host name to host name MY. Now start configuring your fast Ethernet interface. So interface FA0/0. Give an IP address that we have assigned to it. IP address 192.168.10.1 space. Give its default subnet mask and hit enter. Say no shut. So you will see that the status of the fast Ethernet interface between the router and a switch is changed to up. So line protocol and interface FA0/0 changed state to up. Now once you configure this, make sure you configure the serial interface. Just type interface as 0/0 and then give its IP address. So this IP address of serial 0/0 is 10.0.0.1 followed by its subnet mask, which is 255.0.0.0. And now remember, this is a DCE side. We need to configure the clock rate. So clock rate, give 64,000. And then don't forget to say no shut, which will bring the status of serial 0 interface to up. But we need to configure on the other side because it's saying that there is a directly connected router to it. So we configured fast Ethernet interface and serial interface. These are the only two interfaces that you see on this New York router. Now minimize this. Let's go to our California router. In this case, remember that we have to configure three interfaces, which will be fast Ethernet 0/0, then serial 0/, let's see what it is, serial 0/0, and on this side it is serial 0/1. So these are the three interfaces that are connected to a California router. So we need to configure all these three different interfaces. So let's begin with the California router. Go to CLI command and then say no here and type enable to go into the global mode and config T to go into the config mode, and then now here we need to change the host name, which is California, We change the host name. Now let's begin in configuring interfaces. First, configure Fast Ethernet interface FA0/0, followed by its IP address, which will be 192.168.20.1 in this case. As you see here, this is Fast Ethernet interface 20.1, and give it subnet mask 255.255.255.0. And then you don't have to configure the clock rate for any Fast Ethernet interfaces. Remember, the clock rates will be only configured to the serial interface, and that too if it is a DCE. Right? Say no shut here to bring your interface up. So with this, you will see that there is a change in the interface. Status change from down to up. Now we configured the Fast Ethernet interface. We need to configure two other interfaces, which will be serial 0/0 and serial 0/1. So let's begin with serial 0/0, which will be this side. So it's still under this network. So interface serial 0/0, followed by its IP address, which will be 10.0.0.2, followed by its subnet mask, and just say no shut. That will change the status of a serial interface between the New York and California to up. Hit enter. Now we need to configure one more interface on this router, which will be serial 0/1. So let's begin with that interface S0/1, and then say IP address. Now this side, it will be this network. So we have 20.0.0.0/8 network. So its address is 0.1, so 20.0.0.1, 20.0.0.1, followed by its mask 255.0.0.0, and just say, this is, we know that this is the DCE side, so we need to configure a clock rate. So clock rate 64,000, and then say no shut. Remember, the interface will be up only if we configure the other side of the interface on an Illinois router, because both this interface is connected to its directly connected neighbor, which is the Illinois router. So we configured all the three interfaces on California router, which will be Fast Ethernet 0/0 serial interface 0/0, and we configured serial 0/1. So we're done with this California router. Let's go to the next router, which is the Illinois router. So I'm going on to Illinois router now. Here, again, I need to configure three interfaces, which will be Fast Ethernet 0/0. And then this side it is 0/0, and this side it will be 0/1. Like how we just configured on a California router. Okay. So this is our Illinois router. So let's begin configuring Illinois router. Enable. Go to the config mode and say interface FA0/0, and then its IP address. So for Illinois router network, we have 192.168.30.0, So we configure 192.168.30.1 followed by its subnet mask. Hit enter and then say no shut, which will bring our fast Ethernet state to up. Hit enter. Now we need to configure the serial interface S0 slash, what is this? 0/0, right? So interface S0 slash 0 and its IP address. What is the IP address? It is, in this case, it is 20.0.0.2 followed by mask 255.0.0.0 and then just say no shut, because we don't have to configure the DCE, because this is the DTE site, and DTE site, which is the data terminal equipment site, we do not configure the clock rate. Alright, so now we're done with this interface, serial 0/0. We need to configure the last interface of this router, which is serial 0/1. So let's go to our interface S0/1 and give an IP address for this network, which will be, in this case, it is 30.0.0.1. Scroll it down. So it is 30.0.0.1 followed by its mask 255.0.0.0. Remember that this is the DCE site. This is the DCE site. So we need to configure the clock rate on this. So clock rate 64,000 and then say no shuts. So we're done with our Illinois router. Now the last router we need to configure, which is Florida router. On this, remember that we have only two interfaces to configure. One interface is our fast Ethernet 00 and the other interface is serial 0/0. Alright, so let's begin with our Florida router. Now, enable, go to config mode and change the host name to FL. Now interface FA0/0. IP address. What is the IP address? 192.168.40.1 followed by 255.255.255.0, and then bring this interface to up state, say no shut. So this will bring our interface up. Now the last thing we need to configure on this router is serial 0/0. So now do IP route, interface S0/0 and then say IP address. So in this case it is 30.0.0.2 followed by mask 255.0.0.0 and say no shut. So we configured all our routers, its interfaces, fast Ethernet and serial interfaces. want to, the Illinois router, I didn't change the host name on this. So let's exit out here and say host name. So you can do any misconfigured items at the end, anytime whenever you want to. This will be same for your interfaces. If you forgot to put any IP address for any interface, you can go back and check what interface you need to configure, and then you can do the configuration of or assign the IP addresses for that interface. So we're done with configuring our interface and serial interfaces on all of these routers. Now, we need to configure a static route. Now, one thing to remember in a static route, whenever you configure a static route is nothing but a manually configured route by the network administrator or the network engineer. What he does, he goes to this network and manually configure all the different route destinations network address. So let's say if I want to go to 192.168.20.0 network, whose subnet mask is 255.255.255.0, and its next hop address will be 10.0.0.2. And hit enter. Now similarly, I can go to other network, which will be 30 network. We have the same interface. We have the same next hop address. And from here, if I want to go to 40 network, I will just hit up arrow and change the destinations network address to 40, because these are the three other networks that we have in our topology. So IP route 192.168.20.0, 30.0 and 40.0. For any of these networks, the next hop address will be always same. So with this, we're done with New York router, configuring all the manual routes that you're saying. Anytime, if you want to go to 20.0 network, you have to go via 10.0.0.2, or if you want to go to 30.0 network, you will be going via 10.0.0.2. 40 network, you are going to the next hop address of 10.0.0.2. Right. Now, when you're configuring a California router, here, for this network, the next hop address will be this side, and for this router, if you want to go to these two networks, your next hop address will be always 20.0.0.2. Okay, so let's begin with California router. Enable, go to config mode. Now here, I will be configuring the static routes, IP route